Downturn is turning many Americans into renters.
A report in USA Today says that by the next decade, home ownership rates will fall to the lowest level since the 1980s.
But our next guest says it's not an end to the American dream, but a trend that's long overdue.
We are pleased to welcome in an exclusive interview Thomas Sowell. He is an economist and senior fellow at the Hoover Institute at Stanford University and author of the new book, The Housing Boom and Bust. Professor, great to have you here. Now, you're famous for having said there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs. We have been told for years that housing was something that is only beneficial to Americans, but there are some trade-offs. As good as it can be to own a home, not everybody should, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's ridiculous that the government should even be keeping statistics on what percentage do and don't own homes. Each individual knows what that individual can afford. I mean, when I could afford a rented room, that's what I lived in. And when I could afford an apartment, I lived in that. And when I could finally afford a house, I lived in that.
Professor, you are sounding very smart. And I have to tell you that people think that housing is some type of right. It's not. It's a privilege that you work toward in your life. And I think people got very used to opportunities that were thrown at them that appeared to be real, but they were completely fake. So how do we get off that addiction to something that never was real in the first place?
I guess what has to happen is the politicians in Washington have to get off their addiction of trying to run other people's lives. And that's going to be a much tougher problem. The market is already adjusted in many ways. Credit is no longer as free as it was a few years ago. People aren't buying houses as expensive as those they bought a few years ago. So the market is already adjusting. The politicians don't adjust.
Now, all of the new housing proposals, including, of course, the $300 billion housing bill last fall, are focused on keeping people in their homes. And among those people, surely there are many who should never have been in the homes, who are in mortgages over their head. Is there a danger, as we look at all the foreclosures, of trying to keep too many people in their homes, maybe some of whom shouldn't be there?
Oh, absolutely. Some statistics already show that many of the people who've had their mortgages adjusted when they couldn't make the payments fell back into delinquency again.
Professor, tell me what you think of the mortgage lenders. And I'm talking about not the people who are now reworking mortgages. Some of them are the same, but the people who really tricked others. And you know, you could also blame the people who signed on the bottom line and didn't read the fine print. But do you think that there should be some type of regulation of mortgage lenders, basic regulations, so that they don't write junky loans again?
Well, it was the regulators who pushed the mortgage lenders to lend to people who couldn't pay. So if you mean ideal regulation, I think ideal regulation would be wonderful, like ideal anything. But the actual regulation that has been behind this crisis, the housing crisis, was precisely what pushed banks and others into giving loans to people who couldn't repay it, and pushed Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac into buying up those loans from the initial lenders.
But there were also a lot of lousy loans that were packaged in the MBSs, the mortgage-backed securities, went on to be packaged in CDOs and other sort of securities. And some folks who were passing these on, the allegations have been made against Bear Stearns and others, knew that they were packaging lousy loans, but sold them as pretty good MBSs. Should there have been some regulation, or is it just buyer beware?
I think buyer beware has a much better track record than government regulation. Again, what was pushing lenders in this direction was the government itself. Now, if you're saying if we had perfect government regulation, shouldn't we have more of it? Of course. If we had perfect markets, we should have more of it. Perfect people would be nice, too.
There are no solutions. There are only trade-offs in life.
Professor, thank you very much. Great to have you on the program.
Thank you so much. And the book is The Housing Boom and Bust. If you haven't read a book by Thomas Sowell, you've been missing a lot. He's been writing them for 30 years now, and they are fabulous. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Las Vegas